Hello and welcome to another video. I'm glad you're here. This is Jennifer. So today I am super pumped to share with you a game changer for foiling. This is such a fun technique and allows you to get more out of your foiling that you do with the hot foil machine. I have lots of different techniques and ideas to show you. I'll first share lots of examples of the technique, then I'm going to go through making some monogram cards for my daughter's teacher. So stick with me, I've got a lot to share. If you have ever considered a hot foil machine and wondered about it, today's video might push you over the edge. This is the game changer. This is from Pinkfresh Studio. It's the solid hot foil plate. This allows you to use your leftover foil to create reverse foiled images. This works incredibly well. And cheers to Heather Hoffman, who came up with this idea. It is brilliant. This solid hot foil plate allows you to do a lot of extra cool techniques with your hot foil machine. Now, the machine that I use in my videos is the Spellbinders Glimmer machine. Now, the reason I'm using this one is because I have a Spellbinders Platinum die cut machine, and they work together. If you have a different die cut machine, there are other hot foil machines, and you can use those in the same way with the same products I'm using today. So you just need to look into what hot foil machine works with your die cut machine. So this is the Spellbinders Glimmer. I know a lot of people use this one. It is wonderful. It adds heat to hot foil plates, foil, and cardstock. And then you move it over to your die cut machine, which allows you to add the pressure. Now, there are many ways to do foiling. I will link to a playlist here of videos. A lot of the methods do not require a machine like this. However, the smoothest, shiniest, and best foiling results do come from using a hot foil plate machine like this one. Now today I'm going to show you how to really expand your use of it using that new solid plate I just showed you. But before we get into foiling, I do want to remind you that the type of cardstock you use really does make a big difference when it comes to using a foiling machine. There are two types of cardstock that I like to use for foiling on white. The best by far is the Spellbinders Glimmer cardstock. You can get this at Spellbinders, Simon Says Stamp, and others. It is a super smooth paper. I think it's actually a synthetic paper, and it foils beautifully. You really want a super smooth cardstock. Another option is a Hammermill smooth white cardstock. It's 100 pounds. Be sure to get the right one. It's linked below in my description. This is also very smooth cardstock, and you can buy a bunch of it at once. It's also great for blending and other things. So this is another good option and what I happen to use in today's video. But either of those white cardstocks are best for using with hot foil plates. You can also use colored cardstocks too, but for today's technique, I'm sticking with these whites. The other thing you want to be sure to use is hot foil rolls that are meant to go with a hot foil machine such as the Glimmer. I use the Glimmer hot foil rolls from Spellbinders. And I, of course, have all that linked below. For my first demonstration, I'm using the Pinkfresh diamond foil plate. I've used this in a video before. At the top, I'm taping to create a hinge, a piece of that Hammermill cardstock, and I'm putting a piece of hot foil right in there, and I slide it all the way up. Always make sure that the pretty side of your foil touches the pretty side of your plate. You then lay the plate down on the hot area of your hot foil machine and put the shims on top. There are two shims, and I like to put an extra piece of cardstock in there too. Now, I had let my machine get all warm and ready. It was ready to go. I pushed the timer. When the light stops blinking on the timer, it's time to go over to your die cut machine and run it back and forth slowly through there. This is the Spellbinders Platinum machine, which works with that Spellbinders Glimmer machine. So the Glimmer machine heats up the plate. The die cut machine applies pressure. Since this is a large background die, I went back and forth slowly through it a few times. Not sure it makes a difference, but I ended up getting great results. So now I'll carefully remove my cardstock and foil, and then I will peel the foil away and look at that. Glorious. But remember how we always have that leftover piece of foil? We could just tape it onto a project, but today we're going to actually foil with that so it doesn't go to waste. This is where that solid hot foil plate comes into play and the best, most useful way to use that plate. So now I have another piece of the Hammermill cardstock, and I'm taping it like a hinge on top of the solid hot foil plate this time. I'm taking that leftover foil, laying it there right onto the foil plate. Remember, the pretty side of the foil always touches the plate. So the pretty side kisses the plate. And I even have that on a little note on my machine there so I don't forget. So I'll just lay that down there, flip my cardstock down. I did trim that a bit because I had a boo-boo off screen. And now I will put the plate down onto the hot part of the hot foil machine, then put the shims on top. I again have a piece of cardstock in there. I find that with my particular machine that's helpful. You'll need to test on your own. I push the timer button. When it stopped flashing, I take it out and I go back and forth slowly through my die cut machine. You'll notice that I go back and forth a couple times towards the center because this is a large plate. And again, I feel like if one hug is nice, a few extra hugs are always better. And that's kind of what I'm doing here. I'm just trying to really make sure that that foil transfers. So I take the platform back in so that it can keep charging and warming up for my next run through. Now we'll carefully remove the paper and the foil, and you're going to be amazed. I was so amazed when I saw this. Now I peel off the foil. Watch, the foil piece is clean then, and look at that. We have a reverse. So these two are the same hot foil plate, but we have the reverse of it because we have that solid hot foil plate now. I just think this is brilliant and a great way to really extend the life of your foils, your plates, and the ways that you can use them. I wanted to test this again with another large hot foil plate, but this time with lots of detail. This is one of my favorite combinations. This is the Pinkfresh Folk Art Birds hot plate. There is a coordinating stamp, die, and stencil set that you can use along with it. They're all sold separately, so you could just get whatever you want. I'm only using the plate today. I put the plate onto the hot Glimmer machine. I put a piece of foil down, face down on it, then cardstock on top of that. Then my shims, and I push the timer button. When the timer stops flashing, I take all of the plates out, run it back and forth through my die cut machine, and then we can have our results. And it is beautiful, just gives beautiful, crisp results. Now I have the solid hot foil plate on my Glimmer machine. I'll lay the negative space of the foil on top of it, the leftover. Then I will put another piece of cardstock, then my two shims with the cardstock shim between, and press the timer button. Make sure you give it that amount of time. You want your hot foil plate to be super hot when you take it over to your die cut machine. That way you can be sure all the foil transfers. All right, let's take a look and see how well this did. And as we peel this off, oh my goodness, look at that, absolute perfection. So now I have a reverse. And I just think that really changes the game because I can get a completely different look. You can ink over these. You can do anything you want. Now let's do one that we can die cut too. This is the Joyful Peonies. I've used this in a video before also. And there is the hot foil plate, the layering stencils, the die cut, and the stamp that all line up. So you could just use whatever bits and pieces you would want. Now I'm going to use the hot foil plate and the coordinating die. Always make sure the light that says platform ready is on. Then put your hot foil plate onto the hot portion. The gray area there is the hot portion. Your foil pretty side down. Then your cardstock. And again, all of the cardstock I'm using today for the foiling is that Hammermill cardstock. Then you put your shims on top. You press the timer button. The timer stops flashing when it's ready. Sometimes I give it an extra 20 seconds. And then I run it through my die cut machine. This one I just went back and forth because it's not too big. Doesn't require any extra attention to make sure that it foils perfectly. And I will tell you, I did a lot of foiling this day, and I think I only had one time that it didn't work well, and that was because I forgot my cardstock shim. So you just want to experiment and get to know your machine. Maybe your machine doesn't need an extra cardstock shim. Mine happened to. So you'll just want to play around with your machine to get to know how it will work best. And now it's time for that game-changing solid hot foil plate. I tell you, I think this thing is brilliant. Then I'm going to lay my negative foil on it. This would normally have gone in the trash. You could try to tape it onto cardstock, but never works that great. Now I'm laying cardstock on top of that, the shims, push the button. When the timer goes off, run it back and forth through my die cut machine. All right, let's see how this looks. This is that large negative space. And as we peel it off, look at that. Wonderful. So now we have a thin outline detail one, and then we have one that's covered in foil. And the cool thing is the coordinating die will line up with both. So we can have two die cuts that are the same, but reverse foiling. And those could be used together or separately on a card. By the way, I forgot to mention that Hammermill cardstock is very inexpensive, and a ream of it will last you a long time, and you can use it for other card making things too because it's so smooth. Okay, so there's how you can do the reverse foiling and use the coordinating die along with it. I also found that this solid hot foil plate technique, it works really good with your sentiments. So over on the right, I've already done the foiling. On the right, we hot foiled with the sentiment foil plate. Then in the middle there is the leftover foil that we foiled with the solid plate. So we can use that extra. And I'll use the coordinating die to cut out both of these. The cool thing is it foils all these sentiments at once and you die cut them all at once. And the neat thing is when we die cut the reverse ones here in the middle, you get a different look. So how this die or this hot foil plate is originally intended is to give you gold foil letters or whatever foil letters on white. The one on the right is the opposite, and that's what we get with the reverse. So it's gold on the outside and white in the center. It's just another fun option, and now I have a drawer full of sentiments ready to use. Now, I also wanted to remind you that you can hot foil with your cutting dies. A lot of cutting dies work great for foiling. So I'm taking this Lots of Love that I normally use to cut. I'm laying it backside onto the hot foil machine, putting foil on top of it, then a piece of cardstock, and then the shims, just like we've done before. And what happens is this die will act as a hot foil plate. But only the raised areas or the cutting edge will foil. So we'll have a very thin outline of the words Lots of Love. Now this works great with snowflake dies and many others. So you just want to try any dies you have. It's a great way to get more from your dies by using them with the foil machine. There you go. Look at that. Isn't that cool? I've done a bigger tutorial on using dies in your hot foil machine. I will link to that up here on the top right so you can check it out. But I was going to try this out and see if that negative piece would work with the solid hot foil plate. I wasn't sure if it would since it's such a thin foiling we did before, so I wanted to try it. So I put the hot foil down, then the cardstock, the shims, press the button, the same thing over and over, run back and forth, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that the reverse, I think, even looks better than the first run through. So now anytime I foil with my dies, I will definitely be doing this reverse foiling because it looks impressive. So I'll just peel off the clear piece and look at that. I just think that is fantastic. And now I can use the coordinating die to cut those out too. So here we have the two different options of foiling that we did with a wafer thin die. These are just some of the ways you can use that solid hot foil plate. I plan to show you more in the future because I do think it is a tool that is worth investing in if you have a foiling machine. So those are just a few of them. Now let's get into making some cards too. I thought it'd be fun to make a set of monogram cards for my daughter's teacher. She sent home a thank you note, and I thought if she sends home thank you notes, then she should have some handmade thank you notes to send home. So I started doing them, and I thought I'd share the first few with you today in this video. For this, I'm using a new Pinkfresh alphabet set. Now, all of these pieces are sold separately. You don't have to buy them together. There is a stamp set, there is a hot foil plate set, there are coordinating dies, and there are layering stencils. Now, when I see products like this, I usually don't get the stamps because I prefer the hot foil plate. I just love that foil look. But you could pick apart whatever parts you want for this. The stencils make them very fast to color, but if you like to color, you could always skip the stencils. In this video, I will be using the hot foil plates, the coordinating dies, and the stencils, and I have lots of different ways to use them, and I'll share them all with you. I'll be making monogram cards, and then the last card in this video will be a thanks card using this set. Okay, so let's get started with our foiling. This time I have a pink foil from Spellbinders, and I'm laying that down onto one of the alphabet plates. Again, always make sure your machine is hot. The ready light needs to be on, and always make sure you give it enough time, that timer. Make sure it completely runs through before you pick it up and move it through your die cut machine. Okay, so let's see how this does. I go ahead and remove everything, and let's check out the foiling. Beautiful. So now I have pink outline, but I want some solid pink letters too, so I'm going to use the reverse piece. I like to use my strong Misty magnet to pick up these hot plates and put them off to the side so I can move on to the next one. So this is a solid hot foil plate. My machine says platform ready. I lay the foil pretty side down onto the solid plate. Then we put on our cardstock, our shims, press the timer button, run it back and forth through the die cut machine, and I am blown away by how solid the results are. When they told me they were coming out with this hot foil plate, I wasn't sure if it could really foil well, and surprisingly it does. If you find yours isn't foiling well, try adding a shim in between the shims like I do, a cardstock shim. Or try making sure that your platform is very hot. Give it a little extra time. And more than anything, use a smooth cardstock. If you want a colored cardstock and you're finding you're not getting smooth results, try using this Hammermill cardstock or one of the other smooth ones in white, and then ink blending to add color. You can ink blend over your foil. Okay, so now I can use the coordinating dies to cut out the first letters we did. Then I can use the coordinating dies to cut out the reverse letters we did. And so now I have all of these letters that I can use to make monogram cards. Now today I'm only using my K's and the D's. I'm saving my H and I so I can do some high cards. And then I'm saving the other initials because I plan to make a lot of these foil monogram cards for Christmas gifts, and so I can use some of those leftover letters. Okay, let's do some more. This time I'm using one of my favorite foils. This is a gold color called Aura, I believe it's called. It has a gold but iridescent look to it. I like that, and the silver iridescent holographic one called Prism. Those are my two favorites. They're hard to find, but if you ever find them in stock, I encourage you to grab them because they're just beautiful. I think they catch the light more than the traditional gold and silver. So again, I think that's Aura and Prism. This is the Aura here. Okay, so now I'm putting the negative piece down onto the solid hot foil plate and doing the same process with that. So we'll have both the positive and negative foiled pieces. You can really see that gold iridescent look to it. See how it's got that, it kind of picks up colors around it. Absolutely beautiful. So then I can die cut both of those pieces. So after doing a bunch of foiled letters, I thought it'd be fun to add a little bit of color to some of them, to the ones that have the open area. And I'm using the stencils for this. Now you could just color them in with markers. You could use your Copic markers or whatever markers you want to add your own color. I'm doing a lot of letters and I'm faster with stencils and inking tools. So I decided to use the stencils. The stencils are very easy to line up. They number the stencils in the top corner. And they also have little tick marks so you can line up easy. But I find regardless, you can see how it lines up very simply. I have Pinkfresh inks today and a Rabbit Hole Designs ink blending tool. I like this blending tool because it has a smaller end to it, so I can get into smaller areas like this and not have to use as much ink to cover the areas. Also, if I wanted to do each letter different color flowers, by using a smaller brush, I can get into those smaller areas without having to mask. So I think there's 5 or 6 stencils to layer here. And I just chose some colors from the Pinkfresh Studio lines to just fill in these areas. Now you could use absolutely any inks here. You could use your distress inks, oxides, pigment inks, dye inks, anything. I often use my Pinkfresh inks because the color selection they have, the line of colors, are very happy colors. And I like kind of bright cards. So here I'm using ballet slippers, sparkling rose, and then a raspberry color. And then I used the pear green color and also key lime. And I like that there are so many layering stencils because you get the details to these. And stencils aren't that expensive. It's a tool that you can use over and over again in many ways. You could even use that last layer and maybe do like a glitter gel instead of an ink color. And look at that. I just love those little flowers. Now you could leave it as is with the letters being white with the gold outline, but I decided to fill them in with a yellow. I think this is called Lemon Whip, and I just think these are precious when they're done. So you could make a very simple card with these, with the gold outline, those sweet colors inside. You could really create a simple card, but you know me, I have to step things up a bit. So I did some stenciling around the note card too to match those letters in the center. But before we do that, I wanted to talk about that rectangle in the middle where it says from the desk of Carrie Dodge. I plan to give these to Lila's teacher, and I thought a personalized cards would be fun. So in Microsoft Word, I just created a document where I use size, I think 14 font to print from the desk of Carrie Dodge. I printed it with my inkjet printer in black ink onto that Hammermill cardstock so it would match everything else. And it printed wonderfully. I'm now using an old rectangle die that does piercing on the inside edge. I think it might be from Lawn Fawn. And I'm using that to cut out from that printout. Then we can add our foiled initials right above it, and we have some monogram cards to use. I just think monogram cards and from the desk of a teacher's name are just fun, something extra special for her. Now, here's the cool thing. Remember how I said I printed that on my inkjet printer? You can foil with an inkjet printer. However, the foil is not the same as what we used before. Before we used Glimmer hot foil for a hot foil machine. This is Deco foil from Thermoweb. This is a transfer foil, and you need to use a laminator for it. 2 different types of foil. But if you're into foiling like me, you might have both, and I just wanted to show you this. So now I put a piece of foil onto that inkjet printer, and I put it into a piece of parchment paper that's folded, and I'm running it through my hot foil, running it through my laminator, my hot laminator. When it comes out the other side, that foil will have transferred anywhere that inkjet printing is, and look at that. Now I have pink foil on this that happens to be a close match to the pink foil I used for my letters earlier. So if you were to make monogram cards like I did here, remember that you can foil with Deco foil on inkjet printing. I will link to a video where I show much more about that if you want to check that out. Okay, so now let's pull all of these things together and make a few cards. Some have stenciled backgrounds, some have foiled backgrounds. Let's do the stenciled backgrounds first. This is the Pinkfresh Blooming Branch set. There is a stamp set, there is a layering stencil set, and there is a coordinating die. For this particular card, I'm just using the layering stencils. I like these layering stencils so much, and you don't need the stamp set with them. You can use them separately. I struggle with coloring, so it is handy for me to have the stencils that line up with the stamping or can be used on their own for a completely different look. So I'm using my Simon Says Stamp blending brushes this time because it's a bigger area. And again, I'm using Pinkfresh Studio inks. And I'm applying light colors first to the most open areas of stencil. And then I just go through the different stencils. Again, they're all numbered and I can easily line them up. I'm working on a Waffle Flower stencil mat. This is new from Waffle Flower. I think it's actually sold out, but they will be getting more in. And it has this little corner, that little nook up there, where you can put your paper and your stencil to line it up every time. And then the right side and the bottom side of the stencil mat are open so your paper can hang out. I really like using these stencil mats because it keeps things from sliding around, and also you can blend on it. Okay, so I'm just going through the layers of the stencils. I believe this one has 5 or 6 layers to it. So look at how realistic that looks. No stamping involved. Then we're using that fresh pear. I love that color. And then finishing off with the last stencil, which gives the details to the leaves. And in that, I'm doing the key lime color. And I end up switching to the olive to make it a little bit darker. So just by using the layering stencils, look at this beautiful arrangement we have. If I want to add details to it, I could stamp the outline image from the stamp set, but I love this as is. So I need this to be bigger to cover a note card background. It would be lovely to have on a card as is, but remember my initial piece, that rectangle is big and is going to cover a lot. So I want to make sure a lot of it's showing. So I'm repeating the process, but rotated next to it. So I have a nice large area that I can cut down to cover our note card. And anything that I cut off that's left over, I can save for another card. After I was done with the stenciling, I trimmed that piece down to get towards the center area, and it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. And I'm gluing it onto a white note card that is the same size. Now it's time to add our little rectangle to the center. I matted it with a dark pink cardstock. It's Simon's Stamp Doll Pink cardstock. And now I'm adding those yellow and pink letters that we did before. Those are foiled, and then I use the stencil to add the colors. Adding those right above our foiled sentiment that I printed on my computer. So this is something that I can print a lot of, die cut all those rectangles, make a lot of letters, and do a bunch of different backgrounds on the note cards. That way when she gets a set, everyone looks a little bit different, but they have the same overall design, which really makes for a nice set. Okay, so on the back of that, I did glue some scraps of cardstock for a little bit of dimension. That's nice and strong, and I'm just gluing that right in the center. And believe it or not, I did not add any pearls or gems to this. I felt like the simple was the best. Definitely put a matching envelope with it. That's an envelope from Simon Says Stamp. And look at the foil. I did gold foil for the outline of the letters, and then I used the gold deco foil on the printing where it says From the Desk of Carrie Dodge. So this is extra special because of that foil shine. And then we have the pink flowers in the background that tie nicely with the flowers on the letters. Okay, let's do another with a stenciled background because those are fun for me. I think it gives a really dynamite result with little effort. This time I'm using a different new set from Pinkfresh. This is the Garden Roses Layering Stencil set. There is a stamp set. I like that these are really fine lined outline stamps. I just think that's beautiful. Not using the stamp set, just using the layering stencils. I use the same colors as I did on the last example, and this time I added a few pink dots in the open areas using a Copic marker. Now in the center there, I used some of the pink reverse foil letters, so there was no stenciling done on that, just the pink foil. And then I also used the pink deco foil that was a close color match on the inkjet printing for the name underneath it. So the overall design is the same as the last one, but this time I used different flowers for the background, and I didn't use the outlined letters, I used the reverse ones. I have one more where I used stenciling for the backdrop on the card. This time I used another of the new Pinkfresh Studio sets. This is the Lush Peonies. Again, there's a very fine lined stamp set. Not using that, just using the layering stencils. And again, all this is sold separately. So I used the layering stencils along with some teal colors. And then I did some blue foiling, colored in the foiled letters. And then I used a kind of close matching blue deco foil for the words underneath. So again, the foiling here is like a turquoise color, which went nicely with the stenciling I did in the background. So far I have 3 note cards of this design where I have done stenciling for the background. I plan to do more of these. I have lots of letters left over, but this is the start of one of the sets I'm giving her. Now there will be a second set of note cards I'm giving her that are the same design, but the backgrounds aren't stenciled, they are foiled. And I started with 2 of those, and I thought I'd share those with you today. This first one is definitely one of my favorites. I'm not sure why. I guess it's the color and the shine on the background. For this, I used an older Pinkfresh Studio Hot Foil plate. This is the Folk Garden foil plate. There is a stamp, a coordinating die, a hot foil plate, and stencils. But today, just using the hot foil plate. Again, I've used a lot of these products in previous videos, and I will have links to them below in my description and on the top right here. So I did the same process before. Over there on the right is what we get when we foil with the hot foil plate. This one that I'm lining up now is when we use the solid hot foil plate with the leftover negative foil piece. So we end up with those 2 pieces, one that has the outlines and one that's that solid background. I used the coordinating die to cut from both. And look at these. These are the ones that were made with the piece of foil that would have normally ended up in the trash. So now I have all of these that coordinate nicely together. I have a light pool colored note card I made from Simon Says Stamp Sea Glass cardstock. and I'm gluing around the outside the solid blue ones. I decided not to use the outline ones up there on the top left. I'll save those for another card. So I just am gluing these around the outside edge. Doesn't matter in the middle because we'll be covering that up with one of our initial rectangles. So after I glued some pieces around the edge, I will just flip it over and trim off anything that's hanging off the edge. But I keep those little pieces because if there are any gaps along the edge that I want to fill in, I can use those little pieces we just cut off. All right, so I'm just trimming some off, and now I can go and fill in some of those places. I think this just gives beautiful results. This is a blue foil that also has that kind of iridescent look to it. I encourage you to look at the different foils from Spellbinders, the Glimmer foils. They're beautiful, and there are many different options, and they're not too expensive. A little goes a long way with foil. Okay, so now we have a background. I have one of my rectangles, and I will matte that with the darker blue cardstock. And then I'll use a KD that is the reverse. So that was made using the solid hot foil plate and some of the same color blue foil. Then I did find a deco foil that's a close match, and I used that on the printed sentiment. I gotta tell you, that background is just fun in real life. So I plan to make more of these in different colors to go in this set of note cards. Yep, she's a good teacher. She gets 2 big sets. All right, here's another foil background. This one's super simple. I have a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch pink note card. I'm opening it up and using an older Pinkfresh hot foil plate on this. I put a piece of tape to create a hinge, and I'm sliding some Glimmer foil underneath it. This is the same pink that I used earlier. Make sure it's covering all of that plate. Then I will take this and lay it onto our hot foil machine and go through the same process we usually do. That way I was able to add a quick foil background onto this pink note card. Remember, that's not the Hammermill cardstock. This is just regular pink cardstock. And notice I do get great foiled results. I do have the negative space of the foil left over that I'll use again later, but this I just thought was a very simple and fast design, and I plan to make more of those for this set of cards. And look how solid those pink foiled letters are. That was just using the leftover foil piece. So I'm getting started on 2 sets of note cards for her. I have a lot more to go, but I have the pieces ready. So I'm off to a good start. But before leaving this video, I did want to share one more idea with you that's not a monogram using those letters because I couldn't get enough of them. I wish you could see this card in real life because the soft ink colors and the foil are beautiful. Let's start with the background. I have a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch white note card, and I just wanted to do some subtle stamping around the outside edge. So I'm using one of the stamp sets I showed you earlier, the Blooming Garden stamp set. I used the stencils earlier. Now I'm just using the stamp set. And I'm just moving my card around in my MISTI so I can use different parts of the stamp only on the outside edge. So I'm basically creating kind of a soft frame here. I'm using Gina K Sea Glass ink for this because it was on hand. I just wanted something soft. So after I stamped all the way around the outside edge, it's time to add the letters to the center. I created the letters as I showed you earlier. I did hot foiling with gold foil, and then I colored them in with the stencils using various colors of Pinkfresh Studio inks. I used the coordinating dies to cut them out, and now I want to arrange them nicely in the center of my card. My trick to do that is to arrange the letters onto a sticky mat, and I'll link to the sticky mat that I like to use below. I can arrange the letters there, make sure the spacing is just right, and it kind of holds it for me. I can move the letters, but it's keeping them from moving around too much. Also, I can pick this up and lay it over my note card and make sure that I like how I have it spaced out. So I can just pick this up and look and make sure that I'm happy with it. And once I'm happy, I can take a piece of masking tape or press and seal or masking paper, press that down on top of the letters, peel them off, flip it over, put any kind of glue on the back. I prefer to use liquid adhesive. One of the advantages of liquid adhesive is if you place it down and you're not happy with it, you can move it around. But in this case, it's just quick and easy to apply. Now I can pick up the tape and take it right over to my card. Make sure I have it right in the center, press it down, and leave the tape on there for a few minutes while it dries. Once it's dry, I can remove the tape and check that out. Perfect placement for a very soft card. I did add a few pearls to the background just for a little accent. But look at that foil that we get, the foil outline with the color, super soft. I wish you could see this one in real life. Now, I didn't use my negative space foil from this yet with the solid hot foil plate, but the nice thing is instead of it going in the trash can, I'm going to keep it and use those reverse letters with the solid hot foil plate. So I think this is just a game changer if you have a foil machine to have this solid hot foil plate that does such great results. I think there have been other pieces with some machines that were to be used in the same way, but this solid hot foil plate is definitely a game changer. It works well. I know a lot of people were kind of on the fence about whether or not it was worth it to invest into a foil machine, and I thought by sharing this, it might help you make your decision either way. And I will be using the solid hot foil plate again in future videos because there's many more ways you can use it. You can use it to make your own foiled paper, your own foiled die cuts, many things. So I will be revisiting it. I hope you enjoyed this. If you are interested in the supplies, they're always linked below in my YouTube description. You can go to my blog for much more information and to bookmark cards and videos. And there are a few more foiling videos and playlists here at the end. Thank you for spending this time with me. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you again very soon.